Welcome back to the deep dive. We're all constantly looking for that shortcut. Not a cheat code exactly, but a way to get to those breakthrough insights faster. And today, we're focusing on a foundational skill. It's one of those things that's so powerful, but often gets overlooked for, flashier metrics.
The art of asking good questions.
Exactly.
That's right. We've gone through a whole stack of research here, all focused on mastering inquiry. Yep. And our mission for this deep dive is to go beyond the usual advice.
Right.
We want to pull out those really strategic, high-value nuggets that show you exactly how asking intelligent, thoughtful questions can, well, radically improve your life, your problem solving, your learning curve, your entire career.
And the relevance here is so immediate, isn't it? I mean, if you're preparing for a tough meeting or trying to figure out why a complex system failed.
Or even just trying to understand a new market trend.
Yeah, the quality of your questions absolutely determines the quality of your output. This isn't just theory. It's a direct path to better decisions. So let's unpack this. Where did this whole idea of a systematic, deliberate approach to questioning even start?
Well, if you trace it back, the real philosophical foundation starts thousands of years ago with Socrates.
Socratic method.
The Socratic method, exactly. And it's famous because it's not about giving answers. It's about using a series of probing questions to help other people uncover their own beliefs.
Challenge their own assumptions.
Precisely. They arrive at a deeper understanding of the world, all driven by this structured interrogation. It's about self-discovery.
That sounds great in, a classical dialogue, but how does that really work in a modern setting? Like, say, a business meeting.
Okay, think of it this way. Instead of a consultant just telling a business leader, your problem is poor team collaboration.
Which would probably just make them defensive.
Right. The Socratic approach guides the leader to realize it themselves. A consultant might ask, what specific outcomes are you missing right now? And then follow up with, if you were hitting those outcomes, what assumption about your current team structure would have to be false?
I see. By forcing them to confront the underlying why, they actually own the solution. The insight becomes sticky.
And that idea didn't stop with the Greeks. It kept evolving, right?
Absolutely. You see echoes of it in the Middle Ages with the scholastic philosophers. They had this rigorous art of disputation, a really structured format for debate where truth was sought through organized Q&A.
And then, of course, the Enlightenment.
The big one.
Yeah.
The scientific method basically formalized systematic questioning. Scientists learned to formulate these incredibly precise, testable hypotheses. They were asking questions at every single step, testing, observing, iterating.
It just shows that effective questioning is really the engine of all human progress.
So that history brings us to today. For the listener, what are the concrete, practical benefits that make this skill worth investing in?
Well, the main benefit is that it forces growth. It challenges that comfort zone of assumptions we all have. We've sort of identified 4 key areas where this really pays off.
Okay, let's start with the relational side.
First, it profoundly improves communication. When you ask a good, clarifying question, you're actively dismantling misunderstandings.
You're making sure everyone is on the same page.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're ensuring that you and the person you're speaking with are operating from the same definition of the problem or the same goal.
Okay, what's second?
It dramatically enhances your problem solving. I mean, instead of just treating symptoms, which is what happens when you jump to a solution too fast,
Right.
Curiosity helps you drill down to the actual root cause of an issue. Asking the right question about why something failed leads to much more effective, lasting solutions.
And there's a relationship component too, right? That's often missed.
Definitely. That's the third point. It builds relationships. When you ask a truly thoughtful, context-specific question, you show that you're genuinely invested in the other person's thoughts and experiences. That creates a level of trust that just making statements never can.
Yeah, it shows you actually care.
And finally, from a professional standpoint, it is the absolute key to innovation and creativity. Questioning the status quo is inherently disruptive. You ask things like, what if we just eliminated this entire step?
Or, if money were no object, what would we build?
Exactly. It forces people to think outside the box.
Okay, that covers the external benefits. Let's shift inward a bit to the psychology. When we consciously form a question, what is actually happening inside our brain?
It's a fascinating and incredibly complex process. Essentially, asking a question kicks off this deliberate search and compare protocol in the brain.
So it's not passive at all.
Not at all. It activates a whole network of neural pathways. You've got sensory areas processing the question, and at the same time, memory areas are firing up, gathering all the stored information that might be relevant.
So it's like the brain is immediately running cross-references, checking its own internal library.
Precisely. And that initial data then flows to the higher cognitive areas for, processing, reasoning, putting it all together. Only then do the language areas engage to actually communicate the answer. It's an incredibly efficient process.
And what's the big cognitive upside of doing that over and over again?
Well, just exercising that muscle stimulates the brain in ways that passively consuming information just doesn't. Research shows it improves memory, it sharpens critical thinking. But maybe the single biggest advantage is that it helps us bypass the limitations of what are called heuristics.
Heuristics. Can you break that down for us?
Sure, heuristics are just mental shortcuts. Rules of thumb our brains use to deal with the massive amount of information we face every day. They're kind of like autocorrect for your brain.
That's a great analogy.
They save time and energy, but sometimes they predict the wrong word entirely. They can lead you to a completely wrong conclusion.
So how does a good question override that faulty autocorrect?
Let's take a classic one. Confirmation bias. That's the heuristic where we only look for information that confirms what we already believe.
Right.
So if you think a new investment is a sure thing, you're likely to ask, so tell me all the ways this is going to succeed. A rigorous questioner does the opposite. They'd ask, walk me through the 3 most likely ways this investment could completely fail.
So you're actively seeking vulnerability instead of validation.
Exactly. You're forcing yourself to look where you don't want to look. That's how you counteract sloppy, biased thinking. It's a huge takeaway.
It really is. Okay, so if we want to get better at this, we need to focus on quality. What are the essential traits of an effective question?
We boiled it down to 5 characteristics. First up is clarity. The question has to be laser-focused. Simple, direct language. No jargon.
So instead of some long, convoluted question.
Right. Instead of, regarding the recent feedback on that long-term strategic initiative, how did that whole process shake out for you? Just ask, how did the project review meeting go today?
Simple language, maximum focus.
Yeah. Next is relevance. It has to be appropriate to the context. A brilliant question about last quarter's sales strategy is useless if the meeting is about supply chain issues.
Keeps things on track.
Exactly. Third, and this is crucial for exploration, is open-endedness. This is the lever for getting deep understanding. These questions encourage stories and reflection, not just a one-word reply.
And those open-ended questions lead right to the 4th trait, which is making them thought-provoking.
Yes. They need to stimulate genuine reflection and challenge those assumptions we just talked about. So instead of asking, do you like the new policy? Which is a closed question.
You'd ask something like,
You'd ask, if you could change one thing about our policies to immediately improve team morale, what would it be and why? It pushes past simple preference and gets into structural analysis.
and the final trait is follow-up.
This one is so important. It shows you're actually listening, not just running through a checklist. Follow-up questions build on previous answers to clarify and deepen understanding. They are the scaffolding of a real conversation.
Can you give an example of a good follow-up?
Sure, someone says, resource allocation was a mess last quarter. A great follow-up would be, that's an interesting point. Can you give me a specific example of where we over-allocated so we can quantify that?
It makes the whole thing feel like a journey towards an insight, not just an interview. Okay, so now that we have the anatomy of a good question, what about the different types of questions we can use? The taxonomy.
Right, choosing the right tool for the job. We can start with that basic split. We've mentioned open-ended questions. You use those for brainstorming, diagnosing complex problems, building rapport.
When you need discovery.
Exactly. Their counterpart, closed-ended questions, are for when you need specific factual info and you need it fast. A yes, no, a number, like, did the client sign the contract before 5 p.m.?
Simple, efficient. Then you have leading questions. These sound a little dangerous.
They can be. A leading question is one that suggests a particular answer. It's biased. For example, don't you agree that the old system was clearly superior to the new one?
So if we're trying to get unbiased information, why would we ever use one?
That's a fantastic probing question right there. So, while they are really problematic in investigative settings, they can have strategic uses. Sometimes you might use one to confirm a consensus or to gently guide a conversation that's gone off the rails, especially if you're short on time.
So it's a calculated risk. You know you're sacrificing pure, unbiased insight for, let's say, directional efficiency.
That's a perfect way to put it. Then you have hypothetical questions.
Right. The what-if questions.
These are so important for creative thinking and strategic planning. What if we completely decentralized our operations tomorrow? They force future-oriented thinking.
And lastly, the two that are essential for just conversational flow.
Clarifying questions and probing questions. Clarifying is, what do you mean by streamline the process? Probing is, can you tell me more about the fear involved in making that change?
And the ability to use those two effectively is what separates a good leader from a great one.
I think so, yes.
Now, let's be realistic. We all know these rules, but we break them all the time.
Yeah.
What are the most common pitfalls that just undermine the whole thing?
The most common failures aren't really in the questions themselves. They're in the listener's behavior.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. The number one pitfall is actively not listening to the answer. You're so busy formulating your next brilliant question that you completely miss the nuance in what they're saying.
You're just waiting for your turn to speak.
That's it. Second is interrupting. It's a massive killer of trust and depth. And third is judging the answers. If someone senses judgment, they will immediately retreat to safe, superficial responses, and your deep dive is over.
We also see those operational mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Like asking 6 questions all at once. It just causes cognitive overload. So if a listener recognizes these bad habits in themselves, how do they fix it?
The single best approach is to practice what's called reflective questioning and pair it with just radical active listening.
What do you mean by reflective questioning?
It means you build on their response by restating part of what they said. So if they say, I felt frustrated because the deadline was too tight, you might respond, you felt frustrated by the tightness of the deadline. What factor specifically made that deadline feel impossible to meet?
Ah, so you're validating their feeling while immediately probing for the root cause. That's really smart. It avoids making assumptions.
And it creates this feedback loop where the other person feels heard and you get much, much richer data.
Okay, let's pivot to application. How does this change in different contexts? The question you ask your boss is obviously very different from the question you ask your partner.
It's all about tailoring your approach. In personal relationships, the goal is connection and trust. So you use open-ended, non-judgmental questions about feelings and experiences. What was the most surprising thing that happened to you today?
The focus is on empathy.
Totally. But in business and leadership, the focus shifts to informed decision-making and performance. The questions have to be metric-driven, structurally challenging. What key assumption is our entire next year's budget based on?
Big difference. And in education or coaching.
There, the goal is to promote critical thinking. You're aiming for exploration, not just recall. How might this historical event have turned out differently if we changed this one single variable?
So for anyone listening who wants to get better, where is the starting point?
It has to be internal. It starts with self-reflection. Before you even open your mouth, you have to examine your own motivations. What biases are you bringing in? Are you asking because you genuinely want to learn or because you want to prove a point?
Once that internal work is done, what are the actionable daily steps?
First, just be genuinely curious. Embrace that childlike desire to learn, not a need to sound smart. Second, do your homework. Informed questions are always better than vague ones.
And what about avoiding those pitfalls we mentioned?
Practice active listening relentlessly. That means putting distractions away, making eye contact, nodding, showing you're absorbing what they're saying. And finally, seek feedback. Ask a trusted colleague, hey, how were my questions in that meeting? Did they land well?
A lot of people are just held back by fear, aren't they? Fear of looking stupid.
That anxiety is a huge obstacle, and we have to consciously create an environment for ourselves and for others that's non-judgmental. You have to remind yourself that asking a question is not a sign of ignorance. It is the highest form of intellectual engagement.
If you don't ask, you don't learn.
And you definitely don't innovate.
This has been an incredibly deep dive. I mean, good questioning is just, it's a fundamental skill for communication, for problem solving, for growth. It demands clarity, relevance, and above all, that disciplined, active listening.
And ultimately, it's about fostering that curiosity, building connections that go way beyond just a transactional exchange of data. When you move from simple queries to sophisticated inquiry, you really can drive positive change.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? In a world that is just saturated with information where everyone claims to have the answer, the ability to ask a truly good question stands out as a rare and profound skill.
Your colleagues might be focused on the quantity of data they can gather, but your advantage will always lie in the quality of the questions you pose. By dedicating yourself to disciplined inquiry, you cut through all that noise, you focus on what really matters, and you can meaningfully shape your future. Because the simple, undeniable truth is this: The quality of our questions determines the quality of our lives.